I wouldn't have gone to an interview with Jim Gordon looking for him to give me factual details of his life, and to recollect.
We lost drummer Jim Gordon March 13th, 2023. He was one of the greatest drummers of all time. But years ago, he took his mother's life. Drums and Demons is a brand new book by Joel Selvin. He looks deeply into the life of drummer Jim Gordon. And he never had a chance to ask Jim Gordon any questions because Jim really didn't want to see anybody when he was in prison. He refused visitors. But I did ask him, what would be that question if you were sitting across from Jim Gordon? On Rock History Music. Jim Gordon was a professional drummer. Born July 14th, 1945. He was famous for being a very popular session musician and was known as a protege to drumming legend Hal Blaine. He played on some classic albums, like the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. He was in studio with Paul Revere and the Raiders, as well as the Byrds and Judy Collins, and Frank Zappa. In 1970, he was part of Joe Cocker's Mad Dogs and Englishman tour. He also toured with Traffic and was on 2 of their albums, including Low Spark of High Heel Boys. He was featured on Harry Nilsson's famous Nilsson Schmilsson. There was also Johnny Rivers, Art Garfunkel. Let's not forget he was on Steely Dan's album Pretzel Logic featuring Ricky Don't Lose That Number. And a few tracks on Alice Cooper's 1976 album Alice Cooper Goes to Hell. Gordon was one of the most prolific session drummers of the 1960s and 70s. He was known for his incredible versatility and, as mentioned, famous for playing on some of the biggest songs of those decades. He was born in Los Angeles and began drumming professionally as a teenager. He became a key figure in the Wrecking Crew group, the not-so-famous musicians who played on very famous hits. Let's revisit some of those hits. Layla with Derek and the Dominos. He was part of that band on their one and only studio album. Though he's given a co-write to Layla, there's a lot of conflicting stories that the piano coda in that song was actually written by Rita Coolidge. Then there's You're So Vain by Carly Simon. His drummings really featured prominently on that 1972 hit that topped the charts in both the US and the UK. One of the most impressive guitar hits of all time has to be Classical Gas by Mason Williams. It's an instrumental, came out in '68, and was one of Gordon's early claims to fame. On that track, nothing but finesse drumming. As mentioned, Ricky Don't Lose That Number by Steely Dan. There was Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell, that famous Jimmy Webb song from '68. Again, very subtle drumming, yet essential for that ballad. It's known as one of the greatest country songs of all time. And the Albert Hammond hit from '72, It Never Rains in Southern California. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention one of the greatest post-Beatle albums of all time by any member of that band, All Things Must Pass, with George Harrison, 1970. There was a dark side to Jim Gordon's life. In the 70s, possibly as early as the 60s, he started hearing voices, most notably his mother's voice. And eventually his condition worsened. Tragically, in 1983, he took his mother's life. He was convicted and sentenced to 16 years to life, though he stayed there for the rest of his life. He passed away in prison on March 13th, 2023. Though there are conflicting stories, it seems his schizophrenia was undiagnosed at the time of the crime. Jim Gordon, one of the greatest drummers of all time, and unfortunately overshadowed by that awful crime involving his mother. If you had a chance to talk to him, it's a weird question to ask you because, first of all, you're going to go there and we guide our questions and our communication based on who we are, but also what we see. What do you think you would have asked him?
I wouldn't have gone to an interview with Jim Gordon looking for him to give me factual details of his life, and to recollect specific things. That would be asking a lot of that personality. In an interview situation like that, I'd want to take the temperature of the interview subject. I'd want to see where he is comfortable going. I wanted to test the strengths of his recollections, what his interest is, what he feels good talking about, and then go there. I don't think I would look for details of sessions or questions about relationships. He did an interview about 6 months before he went to jail with Modern Drummer, and it's out there on the internet. The guy posted the tape.
I heard it this morning.
It's really lucid Jim, right? I mean, he sounds absolutely together. He's totally there, but he doesn't mention another human being. All he talks about is playing drums. and he's quite articulate about it. Willing to go all the way under the hood, and he knows exactly what size cymbals, exactly what drum heads he uses, how he employs paradiddles. I mean, it's a fantastic interview. But again, he never mentions another human being.
I was doing this thing on Derek and the Dominos, and I started getting back into the album, which I hadn't really listened to in probably 20 years. And I remember going,
Good
oh my
record.
God, I forgot what the hell? I've spent 20 years without this record,
A good
and
record.
loving it with older, more mature ears. But
Now go back to the live one.
yeah, there's so many memories around that one. Rita Coolidge, I know was, is that when he first, because he had this outburst with Rita Coolidge. Is that
That
the first
seems to
time
be.
people around started seeing that he?
Yeah, they didn't notice it. I mean, psychotic behavior just blended into the background with all that bacchanalia. Nobody really, so what, Yeah, I think that was like the beginning of Jim uh, acting out uncontrollable impulses. Again, the schizophrenic has this turbulent inner life, uh, disturbing thoughts, disturbing feelings, and Jim repressed that stuff powerfully. The people constantly made mention of a real easygoing smile, and a few people noticed it was too easygoing, that it was a place he went to be safe. So Jim really learned how to present himself as this harmless, inoffensive drummer boy. In his inner life, there was much more turbulence than he ever let on. So they would have these fissures that would happen, and the Rita incident was one, and they would continue over the years, growing sort of larger and more dramatic. Outbursts in the studio that people didn't understand, stop it, you're moving my hands, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the Rita Coolidge thing was sort of the beginning of that. And his inability to have relationships with women was super frustrating to him. And then inevitably sort of ended up with some kind of like violent explosion. So yeah, I mean it's uncontrollable. That's what the nature of mental illness is. It is.
I never read Rita Coolidge's book. I've been off and on trying to get her. It's a tough one to talk, but in her book, she had said that that coda was that she wrote that. What's your take on that at the end of Layla?
Oh, I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it. Uh, Bobby Whitlock recalls the two of them playing it when he lived in a house with them in the Hollywood Hills. Bonnie Bramlett recalled the two of them playing it on twin grand pianos at Olympic Studios in London during a Delaney and Bonnie session with Clapton there. Rita tells me that she gave Clapton a tape of it. So they finished the album, the Derek and the Dominos album, and they're back in Miami doing some post-production. And Layla's done, but Clapton's not happy with it, and he wants to like do something to elevate the track. And he remembers this piece. And Jim cuts the piano part. He's not a great piano player, but he cuts it. And Whitlock doubles it. They make a composite of that. Tom Dowd calls it the piano exit. And they tack that on to the end. Now, when the record was first released in this country, they put the single out without the piano exit. And it stalled up in the 50s in the charts. And a year and a half later, and I don't know who did this or why, they put the single out again, and the album had come and gone, and it was not a factor, but they put the single out again, this time all 7 minutes with the piano exit, and this time it blows up and is a top 10 hit and reignites the album sale. So Clapton's instincts that the song wasn't quite grand enough were accurate. What he remembered about that piece and how he envisioned it there, I don't know, but I have no doubt that it was that everybody involved knew Rita Coolidge was a co-author and just decided to skip over that part. It had happened to her before. I mean, she and Bonnie Bramlett had written that song "Groupie Superstar," and they played it for Delaney, and he says, "Great," and published it as authored by Delaney Bramlett and Leon Russell. I think it was a big hit for the Carpenters.
Make sure you comment on our videos, subscribe to our channel, and share our videos. If you want to make a donation to the channel, there's a PayPal link. Also, join our Patreon. You'll get early access to our videos. And we have a swag store where you can buy a Rock History Music t-shirt, cap, and all kinds of different swag with our logo on it. Subscribe to our channel, share our videos, and comment on them. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music. Take care of yourself.